An ANC delegation is in Zimbabwe to meet ZANU-PF. It will meet the governing party to help deal with the political and economic crisis there. ZANU-PF says the meeting is between the two parties and the ANC will not meet opposition parties. Let's hear from the opposition party now, the MDC Alliance's spokesperson Fadzayi Mahere. Fadzayi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for chatting to us on ENCA. So the ANC delegation touching down last night, have you received an invitation to meet them yet as the MDC?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me. The MDC Alliance has not received an invitation to meet the ANC delegation as at now.
Why does ZANU-PF want to block the delegates from meeting with the opposition? I mean, this is the same thing that happened with the envoys that Cyril Ramaphosa sent a few weeks ago.
We can only assume that this is consistent with the position that the ZANU-PF has been taking of late, that is permeated by a lack of transparency when it comes to the crisis that's in Zimbabwe. We maintain as the MDC Alliance that Zimbabwe faces a governance and legitimacy crisis. And I think anyone who's been monitoring events in Zimbabwe over the last few weeks, over the last few months, has noted that there can be no doubt that there's a shrinking of the democratic space. We've had abductions, we've had arrests, we've had prominent journalists who speak out against corruption being arrested for that very fact. The fact of us opposing government has been criminalized. Public protest, constitutional rights have been absolutely criminalized. There have been extrajudicial killings. We've seen all sorts of rights being crushed and clamped down by the state. So we believe that the refusal by ZANU-PF to allow transparency in as far as, allowing envoys and these delegations to meet a wide array of stakeholders. It's not just about the opposition, it's about civic society as well. It's about also speaking to the survivors and victims of some of these abuses by the state. If they were confident that there was no crisis in Zimbabwe, they'd have no difficulty with allowing the neighbors in and saying, by all means, come into my home and see that everybody is happy. They can't do that because they know that Zimbabwe is in crisis.
When President Cyril Ramaphosa announced the visit, he said the ANC delegation will seek to engage the country's political rivals. He said the delegation must speak to all parties to understand how the ANC and government can assist. So they're sent there to deal with that crisis that you speak of. But what crisis, ZANU-PF may ask? They've always maintained there is no crisis.
Well, we, like I've indicated, say that there is a governance and legitimacy crisis that we've seen commenced in 2018 with the disputed election, and the position that we've consistently taken as the opposition is that we need dialogue to resolve that before we can go forward. We need a strong reform program going forward in order to resolve that before the country can take off. And all the socioeconomic problems that you see, including hyperinflation sitting at over 840%, the fact that the public health system is on its knees. We've seen nurses on strike for over 80 days. The fact that there's been severe wage erosion. Workers can't afford, the basic necessities of life. The fact that even education is in crisis. This is all aside from the complete mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic. All of this, is but a symptom of the larger political crisis that we face. We've got a huge bad governance disease in Zimbabwe. And when people speak out against this crisis, instead of the government in good faith coming out and hearing the citizens' concerns, their reaction is to clamp down, is to arrest, is to abduct, is to extrajudicially kill. And that is the very nature of the crisis that we say as the Alliance is a huge expression of the breakdown of the social contract between the state and the citizens. And it can only be resolved through dialogue between Zimbabweans, underwritten by the international community. That's the only way forward. Thereafter, we have to have huge reform of our state institutions, huge reform of the states. Thereafter, a national transitional mechanism has to be put in place in order to midwife a new dispensation into place, because we know that the false start of the new dispensation after the fall of Robert Mugabe has failed to yield fruit, and Zimbabwe is in huge crisis, as we've seen over the last few weeks and few months.
And what will be your submission then as the opposition party if this ANC delegation gives you that platform?
Well, we'll say that dialogue, number one, because any crisis in Zimbabwe is also a crisis for our neighbors. So we would firstly submit that, if you look at all the evidence of, the crimes against humanity that have been inflicted upon the citizens of Zimbabwe, all the abductions. I need only to point to the MDC trio. I need to only point to the abduction of Tawanda Mchehiwa, the abduction and sexual torture of Nopolo Maposa. I mean, she's in South Africa currently, again on the run, and she's been followed by the state there. You look at all the clampdown. You saw what happened with the reaction, the huge clampdown after the planned protest of the 31st of July, or the political prisoners that were in jail and are in jail. We've got political prisoners such as Job Sikala and Godfrey Kurawone. Godfrey Kurawone has been in prison for 45 days now for simply speaking out. And if you look at the reaction of the state, just 2 days ago, the Deputy Minister of Defense said that sellouts will disappear. Sellouts will be dealt with mysteriously. When you now have, someone as high up as a deputy minister speaking like that of citizens, you've got a huge crisis.
Yeah.
Mr. Mnangagwa himself said that opponents will be flushed out. Shortly thereafter, you see extrajudicial killings. We've got a huge crisis in Zimbabwe. Zimbabweans are not safe in this country. We saw the adverse treatment of Hopo Chingono. He was denied access to his lawyers. He was denied health care. He was incarcerated and denied bail, for over a month and a half. It's simply unacceptable. We've seen the abductions. We've seen the home raids upon citizens. It's this precise clampdown that we're saying that it can't continue. We've got a state at war with its citizens, and it's going to spill over into our neighbors in the region if the region doesn't act. And that's why we're saying that we need to force ZANU-PF to the table. Once a sincere dialogue process starts, we need deep, systemic, political and economic reforms. And thereafter, we start to build the state through root and branch reform. And we take it from resolve the crisis from its root.
Yeah, let's hope that ANC delegation will not leave tomorrow before they also bring the other stakeholders to the table. Fadzayi Mahere is with the MDC. All right, let's